value-based pricing has an ability to at least double your current business.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for in eBay.
I mean, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Jennings Executive Search. I had a great conversation with John Jennings about the skills needed in different pricing roles. He and I think a lot alike. If you're looking for a new pricing role, or if you're trying to hire just the right pricing person, I strongly suggest you reach out to Jennings Executive Search. They specialize in placing pricing people. Say that 3 times fast. Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the dichotomous relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving, and our guest today is Maciej Wilczynski. And here are 3 things you want to know about Maciej before we start. He is the managing partner at Valueships. He has a PhD in strategic management, and he spent his 5 years as a consultant at McKinsey, which is always a hard job. Oh, he also used to be in a metal band, which is pretty fascinating. Welcome, Maciej.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me here.
Okay, just because I loved the line you used in our pre-talk, I'm going to ask you this question. So your metal band wasn't successful enough that you became fabulously wealthy?
Yeah, I kind of didn't make it. I had to move into pricing, but I just told you, like, I also wasn't alcohol or narcotic addicted. So kind of, I think it's a good trade-off in the end of the day. Obviously, being in a metal band was partially fun for a moment, but I'm kind of looking at the movies and the stories. I'm kind of glad that this didn't work out, you know?
Yeah. So I love the line, right? It's like, if I'd been successful, I'd be a crackhead. So, hey.
I would have people, kind of pumping me up and reviving me kind of every time I overdose, but
Yeah. Okay. So besides the fact that you didn't succeed at metal band, how did you get into pricing?
That's actually a very good question. So we have this joke in my family that we are the biggest pricing family in Poland because my brother was in pricing back in the days. His wife was in pricing. This is where they met. And I'm also in pricing. And my wife is into e-commerce, so it's kind of related to the price as well. So, this is the joke that we're in the biggest pricing family. So I kind of got this vibe from my brother, with this difference that he was mostly into retail, FMCG products, and as the fact that I was working at McKinsey at the time in a digital practice, in digital marketing and McKinsey Digital. So I was doing a lot of B2B work, and I realized that, subscriptions, all these things are kind of more interesting for me. So I kind of started my pricing journey because I had someone whom I could talk to, to get some initial books, guidance in generally the interesting topic. But kind of my journey was mostly from the digital world, from the software pricing, so to say, B2B pricing, and this is why I decided to do my PhD in the area as well. So kind of these all things somewhat connected.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. As you were talking about that, I was playing through my brain. I cannot think of any 2 people in the family who are in pricing together. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, like we have 3 of them. And if you consider that my 3-year-old daughter is pretty good at haggling, you can count it 4. It's like, but we have 3 of them. And that's funny. This is actually, when you ask me about kind of a fun fact, I should have mentioned this. But I'm glad this kind of came out accidentally.
Yeah. So what does Valueships do?
Well, we are a pricing and value management consultancy, specializing in, I would say, 3 types of companies, mostly software/subscription businesses, because technically they are the same, more or less the same problems to solve. B2B companies, including, agencies, custom software development, but also to some extent enterprise software. Because if you look at that from the pricing perspective, This is more about B2B sales rather than subscription sales. And the third type of companies is e-commerce, but with a heavy focus on platform and digital businesses. So, like hotel travels, OTAs, marketplaces, all these kind of platform businesses. Effectively, this is where we're the best. So, to conclude, everything that it's digital and has pricing component is kind of where we have the best kind of fit, and this is our ideal customer profile.
Yeah. And so talk to me about B2B SaaS pricing. So why is it unique? And by the way, I know a lot of pricing people that are in B2B SaaS pricing because there's a ton of companies that are in B2B SaaS.
Well, yeah, it kind of, the pricing topic kind of in the B2B SaaS pricing kind of emerged. I think like we can say that Patrick Campbell was a founding father when it comes to kind of popularizing it in the tech world, because it's one thing to be a pricing expert, and the second thing is kind of to evangelize it in the field, right? This is like kind of two things. And also there are several people who are good at pricing, but they're not necessarily pricing experts, they're product experts, and this is interesting. So why is the B2B SaaS is kind of pricing wise is interesting? I believe like there are like two major reasons for that. First of all is like, until the AI kind of, let's say, revolution, you name it, we had a situation where you kind of had the zero marginal cost. With every additional unit of volume sold, it was either free or almost free. Even if you consider like the AWS servers, all this stuff, it was mostly free. So there was no way to kind of apply the cost-based pricing strategy, which is like the usual thing that people do. And this is kind of the first. And second thing is that because of the fact this is recurring, and I'm talking mostly about the SMB or, kind of product-led growth. So where you can click, put the credit card, add users, all this is not necessarily enterprise level sales, but, kind of product-led growth or sales assisted, but with the transparent pricing, so to say. You kind of have this opportunity to, for the first time since forever almost, you had this opportunity for people to self-check out from the actual packaging, and you could observe, design, test, not necessarily A/B test, but because this is something that there are different rumors, but we can get into that, but why you shouldn't do it. But kind of you could check what is happening if you change minor things on your pricing page. And similarly, because of the recurring model, you kind of had this vibe of grandfathering the customers, ensuring they stick to the same prices because they have already paid. So we are mentally not prepared, as I believe, for a subscription model, which is a very old model, but in the kind of monthly recurring subscription model. Because we believe when someone paid $99 in 2018, they should still pay $99 for 2023, even though the value of the product evolved like 5 or 6 times already.
Who actually believes that? Because I can assure you Intuit and QuickBooks doesn't believe that, because I pay them more money every single year.
Yeah. So this is funny, because you kind of realize when you kind of realize when they realize that is that when they are posting for a VP of pricing or VP of commercial, that there will be pricing increases. This is kind of like, you could literally create a SaaS tracker, pricing tracker on when they're hiring, looking for a role, or actively doing projects in the field, that there will be major price increases. So in general, what I see and what I observe as a consultant when we serve companies is effectively companies start with some level of pricing. Usually they kind of make it up, from kind of wind finger type of the pricing, and then kind of, build the product, they scale it, they get initial traction. And after they hit like more or less 150 to 250K MRR, which is monthly recurring revenue, they kind of realize it's like, hey, how about we do something with the pricing? Because, maybe we can do something about it. And then they change the price, or they were already after some initial price changes, but they don't really focus on the older customers. And then they kind of see the initial impact of the pricing. And then there is the moment in which they realize it's like, okay, how about we increase the prices to old customers as well? And once we talked about drag, so when they take this pricing drag, they want to do it more often because they quickly realize that the easiest, the cheapest way for a kind of early stage, or kind of not early stage, but medium stage SaaS for when in a scaling journey is that you can literally buy growth with pricing. Because you have so many discounts, you have so many grandfather customers, you have, limited cross upsell potential, no add-ons policy usually. You don't have these features properly monetized. The packaging sucks. Like there are so many things, and once they take it, there is something like, psst, do you have any more of this pricing? And this is literally what is happening. Also, when it comes to our clients.
Yeah, and so I've worked with a lot of clients where you can just see the fear that they are terrified to raise prices because they think they're going to lose their customers.
Well,
and what always happens is they raise the prices and 2 customers call and complain and pay the price anyway. Right? You're like, okay, got it. That didn't hurt that much.
This is so we even have obviously we are consultants, ex-McKinsey, so we kind of have a slide for that. There are like 4 major reasons companies don't increase prices. So reason number 1 is, but these customers have been with us since the beginning, right? This is kind of the argument number 1. And I mean, yes, they have been with you since the beginning, but the product evolved since the beginning. Like, as I said, like 5 to 6 times better, better, more features, better working, better UX, everything is pretty much better. Second thing is like, we are afraid they will leave us and go to competition. And I'm like, yeah, what are the 2 types of people that are actually checking pricing pages? Founders and pricing consultants. And if you look at that from this perspective, and I think you had this in your book, whether is this like will I or which one moment, like 90% of customers are in will I kind of,
especially if they're existing customers who are subscribing. Absolutely.
Oh, of course, because their kind of actual value and perceived value is much higher, and then therefore they can, they know what they're getting from the platform. So that's obvious. And the third thing is, we want to make our customers happy. This is kind of the, Zappos-like belief that, the fact that you have lower prices means that your customers are happy. This almost never correlate as long as you are not some, honestly, I don't think it ever correlates, especially in B2B software. Like it might correlate, with budget hotels or with kind of B2C type of the situation. And the fourth thing is kind of we don't know how to do it right. So this is a fear of capabilities in the organization that we don't know how to do it right. So this is kind of a thing that I would rather not touch in my organization because we might screw some things up. And the pricing is so interconnected, with retention, with acquisition model, with your finance, with effectively the whole product, obviously the value that is the best communicator of value. So you decide to kind of not to touch it. And I think this is kind of another layer for the companies. And, Stephen Lee also created this article, which is the organizational confidence factor in pricing. And one of the most fundamental things that I had in my PhD was actually coming from this paper. Pretty awesome. And the reasoning was that the organizational confidence, so the organizations believe in themselves, actually, in kind of their self-worth, in the value of their product, means that they can value their pricing as well and value their product in the right direction. So it is the same as with you, kind of when you have like a high level of self-worth, you are not engaging in toxic relations, you're not engaging in toxic situations. It's very psychological. If you look at that from this kind of philosophical perspective, this is a pure psychology that is happening here.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go back. I want to talk briefly about grandfathering in customers.
Sure.
Right. So I actually have a pro and a con thought about that, right? One is, look, they're getting a ton of value. There's no reason that I can't raise their prices. The other thought, though, is when I'm first starting out as a company and I've put people on at a really low price, I don't need to raise their price right away because that's not where my revenue is going to come from. My revenue is going to come from growing or winning new customers. Now, over time, as I've created a large customer base, then it makes a ton of sense to say, look, I'm going to go raise prices on my existing customer base because that's free money. And they're getting a lot of value from me. So it doesn't bother me to grandfather in customers for a period of time, not forever by any means.
And what do you think of it?
What do I think of?
Yeah, do you think that is actually a problem when companies grandfather customers?
I think in the long term it becomes a problem. In the short term, it's not. It isn't even worth worrying about. In the short term, I would rather see you test a new price point and see if you can win new customers at higher prices. And then later on, we can go back and say, okay, now let's get the old customers or the original customers to pay us more. But when you're first launching a company, you're 2 years old, whether you go back and raise prices on on the 10 first customers, who cares, right? I'd rather see you go win 100 new customers because there's way more revenue there.
So there's one angle of looking at that in terms of like timeline. But there are like two things that I believe are important. One is, this scene from Godfather when they have the carpet scene, when they, roll the carpet and they walk it, kind of, you remember this scene? Yeah.
Yep.
So kind of what we always say is like, you need to roll the carpet in order to move it. So if you have the initial customers, because you're, actively engaging in discounts, getting initial traction, getting initial customer feedback, and you're already gathering certain scale, and you have customers paying you like $5 for a subscription that should cost like $500. And this is literally what is happening because you have this all long tail of some level of fools, family and friends, people who are like getting this at 90% Black Friday discount sales or AppSumo discounts, all this stuff. So cut this out immediately, like just raise them. It's what we had for some customers was like, minus 1,700% margin on these customers. So like 700 negative margin on the customers because they were paying $1. And only just by cutting these accounts off, if you consider the costs that are coming, from the customer support costs by every ticket, all this kind of how much it takes to actually have it, we retrieved like, I don't even remember, but there were like $5,000 or $6,000 of the pure MRR. But when we have increased them, the overall impact was for like 50 or 60K, but only cutting them off, if you just turn off their account, was already immediately 5 to 6K in kind of operational costs. So this is something that you should be doing anyway. But what you said in terms of this long-term strategy, I kind of see that, testing the price point with this rolling kind of carpet rolling is like you test the new price point, you see that it's okay, you upsell these customers to this point, you raise it and you upsell these customers. And it will take time to roll them because you have annual sales, these 2-year sales deals, quarterly sales. It takes time to upsell the whole base. So if you do it regularly, it kind of becomes the process. And this is and then, as I said, this is where you can buy growth with pricing. This is becoming the same kind of revenue growth mechanism as, your sales engine, your marketing, as everything you do. Just pricing becomes simply yet another function in your organization that is actively leveraged. And this is what we're usually encouraging companies to do, kind of to move from the passive to active role in the pricing management.
Yep. I mean, obviously I agree with that completely. I just, I don't mind young companies leaving grandfathered customers alone, only because they only have so many, let's say they only have so many hours in the day to worry about things, and worrying about that just doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't cost them very much. It doesn't bring them very much. It's like, go worry about something important.
Yeah. If you don't have if you're pre-product market fit type of a company, if you're still about to reach the certain scale, if your overall, net dollar retention, gross dollar retention is okay-ish, So why should you care, right? It's just like, obviously, if your other aspects of the business are okay, there are other things you should be focusing on, more strategic. You're trying to win the market. Having said that, I have seen companies in distress which were saved by pricing actions,
Sure.
that they actually did it.
Sure. And because I said those words, that I'm okay with companies grandfathering in customers, that doesn't mean I'm okay with them leaving prices low forever, right? It's like eventually you have to come back and say, okay, now how do we make sense of this? How much value are they really getting from our products? And what should they be paying us? And let's start to move them in that direction. Because now we have time, we have energy. The value is 500 times what it was when they first bought the product. So there's lots of reasons why we say, look, let's not leave it there. But in the beginning, I don't care.
Yeah, definitely. Like you should forget the word forever or lifetime in pricing. This is something that is, so when a customer, pure simple thing, when you're giving discounts, just say them that, this is 10% for the first year. And that's already enough. But, obviously this is the pricing execution function, have an Excel or whatever. If you don't have the CRM to kind of do it properly, to just, cut off this pricing. And this is already enough. It is already active function and you're actively increasing, you're boosting the expansion revenue. So this is simply, there are like 5, this is a good rule, like forget the forever or lifetime word. And this is already a lot.
I've never said those words in my work, but I'm going to start saying them. I think that's 100% right? The word forever pricing doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You should not do that.
If I see it in the book, if I see it in the book without a quote,
I'm going to rephrase it. So nice. So what was the fourth one? The fourth one was, they're afraid they don't know what to do.
They don't have capabilities.
Yes. And I think that's actually true with pretty much every company. You and I talk the same language. I could tell just from the conversations we've had, and so we get it. But there aren't that many people like us out there. And so what's fascinating is most companies don't have someone working for them that understand what we understand.
But don't you have this internal fear when you're raising prices for your services?
So I don't have a fear that says I don't know how to do it. I sometimes have a fear that says, will people pay my new price? And so I understand that, right? But that's just a fear of I don't understand my customer's willingness to pay, and I'm just going to go test it.
Yeah. So, but look, you're, I would say, top 0.01% top professional in pricing in the field. And from time to time, you are afraid of whether people will pay the price. So now imagine an average startup or software as a service company founder or board or whatever on what they might be experiencing. This is literally the situation they are in, and I think that pricing is super easy conceptually, but super hard to actually be knowledgeable in, because to become a pricing expert, and I'm obviously, we are pricing experts, so we can talk that how awesome are we, but technically you need to be an
well, you're awesome, Maciej.
But technically you need to be an expert in strategy, in marketing, in finance, in economics, in psychology, in statistics, in product, if you're into product, in sales, if you're into values-based selling and all this stuff. So you really need to kind of be a jack of all trades, essentially, to be an moderately good pricing expert. That's why this is hard, because pricing touches so many things that it's simply a hard decision to make. So where companies should look for the kind of courage and energy to do it is purely from kind of value exercises, to really understand the value, run as many case studies as you can, quantified case studies, try calculating the ROI of your service initially internally as an exercise, as a workshop exercise, and then move and try to do it with your customers to see where to see the power of the product. In other words, I believe this is kind of mind bending for some companies when they realize that, their customers are saving like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and they are taking a penny for it.
Yep.
I had a client, like in the facility management field, where one of their biggest customers was so fascinated by the product that they have realized it's like, whoa, like they didn't increase the prices because the price was okay for that kind, but they realized it's like how awesome the product is, because sometimes you need to hear it from the others. It's like, yeah, your product is awesome. And when someone externally does that, as a consultant, as a research agency, or whatever, it also is a totally different story. So I think this is important. So this is where you need to start from. Obviously, the pricing starts from value, but if you're afraid of raising prices, simply look at your churn rates. If they're like below 4 or 3%, you're good to go.
Yeah. So one of the things, and as you were talking about this, it struck me. I think one of the things that where we add value when we go into a client isn't necessarily the ideas or isn't necessarily the process. It's the confidence that says this is going to work. And so people can now say, oh, got it. This guy thinks it's going to work. It's probably going to work. And they can get over their own fear.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. This is kind of a you can do it type of situation. But also, especially when the company has this community-led growth, there is a strong community around the company, very popular in SaaS business, very popular. That they're like communities of freelancers supporting the product, designers, all these type of creative jobs type of products. They are very often heavy community-based. And when you're raising the prices for a community, you immediately have a shitstorm alert and the community backlash. So I think a role of a pricing manager, not necessarily consultant, but a pricing manager, is to stand strong. And this is kind of like brace yourselves moment, and to stay firm and to ensure that 99% of the conversation is mostly buzz and you shouldn't be you shouldn't even bother. But mentally, it hurts you because someone says bad things about you. So kind of you don't want to make your customers unhappy, right? And because fundamentally we don't want to make other people unhappy, and this is the same with the companies.
So here's what you just said. I'm going to put it in a different setting for a second, right? So I'll go out and I'll do a speech for 1,000 people. And 2 people write feedback that said he sucked. And that's all I focus on is those 2 people, right? The other 998 thought it was amazing. And so now as a pricing person, we go and we raise prices and 2 people come back and complain. It's, I can't believe you raised prices and I'm going to quit and leave. But the other 998 were like, yeah, okay, not happy, but here's the money. And so did we make the right decision? Heck yeah.
Heck yeah, yeah. So these 1,000 people that you gave the speech to, they didn't say anything, but they enrolled or your next seminar.
Right.
Kind of what is happening with the pricing, So this is something that I believe is important, because with the recurring revenue, look, customers, they make a decision every month. If you look at that, they make, I know that this is default option, they forget about these subscriptions, or this is just come and go. This is like a beauty of this model, but technically they are making pricing decision every month to stick to your product. I know it's not that decision as a subscription moment, but still these are like micro moments every month they are making. Obviously with annual deals it's a little different, but considering that there are so many monthly payments, this is slightly different. So look at the Netflix, for instance. Like let's move to the B2C world. Netflix has literally this problem because they have this case. If I don't like the Netflix content, if I believe the TV shows are not great anymore, too woke for some people, or too whatever, or too boring, or too dull, because this is like the things that I read about Netflix, is like they cancel. So they vote with their wallets, and they are making decision every month. They're making a decision every month, and then they can go back and see that there is like a new Witcher season or whatever, right? And this is kind of that is the beauty of the beauty and pain of the whole model. So you kind of also need to be aware of that these people make these decisions every month, and if they are making them for last 18 months, the probability of them leaving if you raise prices by 10%, it's pretty low.
So I actually look at what you just said differently. And so the way I think about it is that as a Netflix subscriber, I never think about it until they send me the notice that says they're raising my price by $2 a month. And then it causes me to rethink my decision, right? Am I watching Netflix enough? Should I switch to Hulu or Max or something else? And so the act of the price increase causes people to make the decision again, where if they're just paying the subscription fee, I already made that decision. I don't have to rethink it.
Yeah, that's happening. That's happening, and people don't like it, right? But it also comes to how you communicate it. If you explain the reasons clearly, link it to the narrative, the kind of the customer-centric narrative. If you call it a price increase, not we have just updated our trade policy or something like this. Right. Like Utpal Dolakia has this awesome article on HBR that I have this, like, if you're going to raise prices, tell your customers why. I Google it so often that if I put it into my Google Chrome, if there's this article immediately pops up, and this is something that I very often send to my customers as well. I think this is pretty awesome. If you call it a price increase, if you tell why, I like to put the data into the communication. I really like to put the value communication, even to some extent that, we have saved you hundreds and thousands of whatever. The more quantified value we can do, the more ROI we can show, and we should be doing it. So, with a personalized communication, it's pretty easy to do. Obviously, you need to have this value quantified first. This is hard, but still you can, even if you don't have it, you can say, like you have like 20 users in the platform. They have logged like 100,000 hours in it, and or whatever, to make it personal, to make it relevant for them. Because sometimes people don't even know how many, the owner, the decision maker doesn't even know if this tool is worth it.
Yeah. I have to say that I think it is absolutely brilliant that if you are able to calculate how much money you're making your customer, to put that into your price increase communication just is brilliant. Absolutely. So, Maciej, we are running out of time, so I have to ask you the final question. Sure. What's one piece of pricing advice you'd give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
Focus on grandfathering. Like, we've spent enough time on that. So I even have this, because when I was preparing for this conversation, because I always know there is this one advice. So if you have value-based pricing has an ability to at least double your current business. I think I honestly believe it, that you can double the business usually. If obviously done right, not immediately, but it can double. So at least 10% of this 100% impact you can get from the grandfathering removal. Usually if you look even on the case studies on our website, on valueships.com website, you can see that we are achieving like 27, 40%, 50 even percent levels. But 10%, this is my value claim, if you ask me, Mark, that I can say that every SaaS company has a 10% of untapped MRR potential. And I mostly take this 10% from the grandfathered customers and the discounting done right. This is critical. You have to do it right. And I believe you have this 10% of clear uplift only in the discounting space, especially if you're SMB, you have like thousands of customers already, you actually have certain scale and, so to say, internal market that you can work on. So this is something that would be my parting advice here.
Nice. It's the free money. So go take your free money. Excellent. Yeah. Maciej, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Well, considering that it would be pretty hard to spell my name, it's maciej@valueships.com. You can also check Maciej Wilczynski on LinkedIn or just Google our website, valueships.com.
Excellent. And to our listeners, thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this, would you please leave us a rating and a review? And if you have any questions about this podcast or pricing, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact. Thanks again to Jennings Executive Search for sponsoring our podcast. If you're looking to hire someone in pricing, I suggest you contact someone who knows pricing people. Contact Jennings Executive Search.